All right. Well, a couple of weeks back, I was on an airplane ride from here to Denver. Not the same ride that I told you about a few weeks ago, but a different airplane ride where I sat down next to a young woman who was probably in her mid-30s. And as I asked her what she was doing, she said, I'm going to Los Angeles via Denver through Arizona and then eventually to LA to see my daughter. And I said, oh, you don't live with your daughter? She says, no, she lives with her dad. I haven't seen her in 2 years, and she's 14 years old. And I've got a 14-year-old daughter, and I know a lot happens between 12 and 14. My heart kind of broke for her. And I said, oh, man, so what have you been doing for the last 2 years? And she told me her story. She just poured it out. Turns out she had been living in Plattsmouth with her boyfriend, that he didn't allow her to have a car or a job, and she spent most of her days caring for his 2 kids, and she seemed to have a relatively good attitude about it, but as time went by, the abuse in her family got worse and worse, and eventually it became physical, and she realized she needed an exit. So she called the only friend who she thought would buy her a one-way ticket from Omaha to Los Angeles, and she was flying to Los Angeles to start a new life. She had no place to live. She had no job she was looking for. She was just hoping to see her daughter and see what the next steps might be for her. And she went through this long list of just pain and regret and remorse for her life, things that she had done and things that had been done to her, and I just sat and listened to her on the plane and realized she was facing a very challenging situation. So I just asked her, I said, would it be okay at this point if I pray for you? Because one of the things I know is that people who are in a crisis, no matter what it is, will almost always say yes if you offer to pray for them. I said, I believe in a God who answers prayers, and you're facing some tough challenges. Can I pray for you? And she said, that'd be great. So I prayed for her, and when I got done, I said, your story reminds me of a story that I've been reading lately. She said, really? What story is that? I said, well, it's 2 kind of weird name people, but their names were Hosea, that was the guy, and Gomer was the girl. And it reminds me a lot of you. And what I realized for this young lady is that in her life, she did not need for me to let her know that she was a sinner. Or I didn't need to heap a lot of guilt on top of her. She was already very aware of these things, and she was telling them to me. What she needed more than anything was to know that despite all the wrong choices she made, there was a God who loved her and who even would pursue her. And so I told her about Hosea and Gomer and, how he went after her and loved her even though she was unfaithful, and he bought her back, and how that represents God's love for us, that he would buy us back even when we go wayward on him. And she said, that's a cool story. Where'd you get that? I said, well, I got it from the Bible. And I said, as a matter of fact, there's one other story that reminds me of you in the Bible. She told me that her story was that she had been married and divorced twice and was living with her boyfriend. And I said, that reminds me a lot of a woman Jesus met by a well in Samaria. And she had actually had 5 husbands, and the guy she was living with wasn't her husband. And she said, how did Jesus treat that lady? I said, he offered her living water. And he said, there's this life that you can't even imagine that I have to offer you. And we went down the track, and we talked about all kinds of things about the life that Jesus would have for her if she would give herself to be his follower. And our plane flight ended, and we collected our stuff. And as we're walking off the plane, she says, by the way, I never asked you, what do you do for a living? It just blew my cover. And that conversation was one of the fun conversations I've had in the last month. Just getting to talk with somebody about the best news in the world. The news of a God who loves us so much that he would die for us, give his life for us, and offer us forgiveness and salvation and hope. And I love telling that story in all different ways to all different people. And I'm convinced that every single person in this room, everybody who's here, has all that you need with the Holy Spirit living inside you to have similar kinds of conversations. And what I want to do this morning is help us all to get an identification point of where we stand and how we can be more equipped to have all of those kinds of conversations on a regular basis. We're convinced here as a church that God has called us to double our impact. And doubling our impact is not just about strategies and systems and meetings and programs. It's all about people. It's about one more person who deeply matters to God. One more person who we can welcome into the family of God and share the good news of his love. That's what it's always about. We learned a couple of weeks ago from 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 14, that Christ's love compels us. When his love sits in us so deeply, we can't help but speak about the things that we've seen and heard that God has done in our lives. Now, most Christians will affirm this idea, that the most loving thing that we can do is to share the best news in the world with people that we care about. But oftentimes an excuse comes up, and people say, you know what, that's really not my thing. You know, you can do that, Mark, because you're a pastor. Or you can do that because you have the gift of evangelism, and I don't really have that gift. And what that means is you share your faith, and I don't. And there's some background pieces to that are partially true, but what I want to do this morning is explore that more broadly. I'm going to do something this morning that I have never done in any church in my life. I've never seen it done in any church that I've been a part of. And I talked to some old-timers here, and they said they don't think in the 90-year history of Christ Community Church that this has ever been done in church before. So we're going to be taking a risk, and I need you to know that you're with me. So if you're with me, say, I'm with you. Good. You don't even know what you're in for. We're going to be spending this whole morning talking about the spiritual gift of evangelism. Talking about the spiritual gift of evangelism. Who's got it, who doesn't, and how to respond whether or not you have that gift. What is your role in this world? Because there really is a biblical gift of evangelism. And the Bible teaches that there's all kinds of gifts that are given to the family of God, to the body of Christ, and that every single person who is a follower of God has these supernatural gifts that God has entrusted to you. Some of you have the gift of shepherding, and some of you have the gift of teaching, and some of you have the gift of helps, and some of you have the spiritual gift of sarcasm. Right? Anybody here got that? Anybody here sitting next to somebody who's got that? Yeah. Spiritual. Actually, that's not on the list of spiritual gifts. But evangelism is. Evangelism is. And what happens is there's these certain people who have this gift, and God has enabled them to have a disproportionate impact on the world of people who don't know Jesus because of the way that he's wired them. They're just able to do that in a huge way. And we want the people who have the gift to be able to use the gift to the best of their abilities. Now, I've learned a few things. I've spent about the last 20 years of my life, most of the time has been working with people who have the spiritual gift of evangelism. And what I've found is that in any given Christian population, about 10% of the people have that gift. About 10%. So that means in all of our services together, Christ Community, we probably have about 300 plus a few people that have the spiritual gift of evangelism. Now, what I found, though, is that of those people who have the gift, about half of the people don't know that they have the gift. They've got it, they just never had any clue because nobody ever helped them to discover that they, in fact, do have that gift. And about half of those who have the gift and know they have the gift won't admit that they have the gift. Because when you think of evangelists, you think of freaky dudes with bad toupees, white Cadillacs, accosting random people on the streets who are way too talkative and, if you're quite honest, are obnoxious. Right? Isn't that the idea? So people who have it oftentimes don't admit that they have it. And of those who have it and will admit that they have it, oftentimes they have not yet developed that gift. And so if you ask the question, how many people have the gift, know they have the gift, will admit they have the gift and have developed it, it gets us down to just about 1% of our congregation is in that category. And that's one of the things that we would love to see change. Because what if everybody who had the gift knew they had the gift? And what if everybody who had the gift and knew they had the gift felt good about it and was on the track of developing it, and then they were able to use it to its maximum potential? What kind of a difference would that make? And what if everybody who didn't have the gift also knew what their contribution was towards the commands of Christ to grow his kingdom in this world? What if everyone who had the gift knew it, and everyone who didn't have the gift still knew what their contribution was? What might the results of that be if a church got turned on to it? Well, I think the results would be supernatural, to be sure. They would be explosive. So what we're going to do is have everybody here take a brief test to determine whether or not you have the spiritual gift of evangelism, okay? You get to take a brief test and determine if you have that gift and what your role should be in taking the word to the streets. Now, before we actually take the test, I want to talk about the gift of evangelism. And we're going to do a survey of every passage in the Bible that has the word evangelism or evangelist in it. And there are actually, here's a big surprise, there are only 3 places in the Bible where those words come out. Only 3 places. So we're going to be looking at all 3 of those places, and we're going to be exploring the gift of evangelism. Ephesians chapter 4, verses 11 and 12 is the first place we'll explore. It says, it was he who gave some to be apostles, some to be prophets, some to be evangelists, and some to be pastors and teachers, to prepare God's people for works of service, so that the body of Christ may be built up. Okay? That is one of the verses. And one of the things we learn from there is that evangelism is, in fact, a spiritual gift. It's listed with 5 key leadership gifts that are in there. And it's important to note that people in the body of Christ are supposed to be equipped by those who have these 5 gifts. Apostles and prophets and teachers and pastors and evangelists. Those are the people who equip the body so that everybody in the church can go and take the word to the streets. Okay? So that everybody can know Christ, so that everybody can be a minister, so that everybody can serve. These gifts are designed to help put everything into play. But this is one of the few places that we actually see it taking place in the Bible. Now, in order to understand what it is, we have to know what it means, what these words mean. So the word evangelism means to bring good news. Real simple, to bring good news. Everybody say, to bring good news. To bring good news. And the idea of bringing good news, I mean, this is a great picture, isn't it? You go, hey, I like that idea of being the one to bring good news. When I think of what evangelism is, it's a lot like having the job of the flower delivery guy. You know what I'm talking about? I've oftentimes thought that's like the best job in the world, to be the flower delivery guy. Because everybody you show up at their front door is happy to see you. Like there's no complaint department for the flower delivery guy. And every time you deliver flowers, that means there's somebody out there who loves you a lot and is thinking about you and wants you to have a gift. It's a cool job to have. Well, this is what evangelism is. It's being the flower delivery guy. You get to bring good news to a world that desperately needs to know that good news. Now, the other word that we need to define is the word evangelist. Evangelist. And evangelist is a person who brings good news. Not real complicated. Everyone say, a person who brings good news. Okay, so that's the evangelist, the flower delivery guy. And when you tell people, you know, I think you're an evangelist, oftentimes you get mixed responses because evangelism is not a popular word in our culture. It's oftentimes even sensed as an abrasive word in our churches, even though it just means somebody who brings good news. Oftentimes you think of somebody who's way too enthusiastic, way too obnoxious, way too in your face, like this guy right here. Right? You think that's what I got to be like, and this guy, of course, grows up to be this guy. And he will talk to you about the words that he brings. And if you become an evangelist, you need to begin talking with a southern accent. And you need to begin adding one more syllable to each of your sentences. Do you know what I mean? And if you hear what I'm saying, say amen. Thank you. And people think if that's what it is to be an evangelist, I want to have no part of that. No part of that at all. I would never want that in my life. The other picture that comes to mind when you think about being an evangelist is this picture. Okay? You got the picture of Billy Graham. And while the first set of pictures is something I would never want to be, oftentimes we think of Billy Graham and we say, that's something I never could be. I mean, that's just setting the bar way too high. I could never reach that level. I could never preach to thousands or millions of people. And he's just an amazing guy. I never would be that, or I never could be that. And those two things tend to immobilize us when it comes to evangelism. So instead of looking at stereotypes, what I want to do is have you answer the big question whether or not you have the gift by taking a little exam. So what I want you to do is pull out these white sheets of paper right here, if you got these when you came in. If not, just find a random place on your program that you can write down a few little answers. Just 5 numbers is all you need to do. And I'm going to walk you through this. Okay? So there are 5 different scales, and on each of these scales you rank them 1 to 5, and 1 is this is not like me at all, and 5 is this is totally like me. Okay, so 5 is the high part of the scale. So number 1, I love to be with normal people. I love to be with normal people. And you'll remember that's our word for people that are not followers of Jesus. We're the ones that are abnormal. They're the ones who are more normal in our culture. And somebody who says, who would be a 5 on this scale would be a person who says, I love to spend my free time with people that are just normal, people who are not Christians. As a matter of fact, I probably spend 50% or more of my free time when I have the opportunity with people who aren't Christians, and I really like it. It's not just because I'm forced to. I enjoy doing that. And if that's the case for you, put yourself as a 5 on this scale. If you come over here to the other side of the scale, a 1 would be somebody who says, I'm kind of intentional about avoiding being around people who aren't Christians. If I had it my way, I'd spend 100% of my time with Christians all day, all night, and I'm really fairly isolated when it comes to spending any time with people who are not believers, okay? And then 2 and 3 and 4 would be somewhere in between those two extremes. Scale number 2 is I know instinctively what to say and what not to say in spiritual conversations, okay? I instinctively know what to say and what not to say. So someone who is a 5 would be somebody who easily moves in and out of spiritual conversations. That when you talk to people, it'll drift towards spiritual things or away from spiritual things, and you just feel really comfortable in a variety of different contexts having those conversations. When people bring up big, hairy questions or problems that they have, it doesn't freak you out too much. You just talk with them about it and help them walk down the road. And even God maybe supernaturally helps you say some things that you had no idea you knew how to say that. But in the moment, it just comes out well. On the other end of the scale, 1 is whenever spiritual things come up and somebody doesn't know Christ, it's like a freak out moment for you. Your palms become sweaty, titches start, making your head bob to the left. And, you want to avoid that situation at all costs. That's a 1. And then, of course, 2, 3, and 4 are steps in between those two places. All right. Scale number 3. Scale number 3 is somebody who has confidence in God and His people and His Word to transform lives. Okay? And this doesn't have to be, in an evangelistic context. It's just when you wake up in the morning and you think of who God is and how He's at work, you just assume that God is going to be changing lives. He's going to be changing lives of Christians. He's going to be changing lives of people who are not yet believers. You're aware of the spiritual realm that's around you all the time. And when you wake up in the morning, you say, God, I want to engage in that spiritual realm, be aware of the life change that's around me, and you see it happen. You see lives changed around you all the time. It's just kind of a normal piece of it. Okay, so that's a 5. If you're a 1, you'd say, I'm not really sure if God's at work in this world at all. I don't really see lives change around me very much, if at all, and I don't have any expectation that God's doing anything in this world. It's really just kind of a natural context. All right? So that's a 1, and a 5 is someone who sees lives change around them just in general. Okay, scale number 4 is disproportionate fruitfulness. Okay, disproportionate fruitfulness. So on this scale, a 1 would be someone who would say, I've never led anybody to faith in Christ. I never have any expectation to lead them to faith in Christ. Not only that, but I'm never really in a kind of a context where I'm helping people move on the scale from 0 to 50. I don't have many conversations there, and if I do, they don't go very well. That's a 1. If somebody is a 5 on this scale, maybe you're someone who's actually, in your lifetime, you've led multiple people to faith in Christ. You've seen it happen more than once, that you've crossed the 50 barrier. Or maybe you don't help people cross the 50 barrier, but you just always find yourself engaged in conversations that are moving people to the right on the scale, that are helping people to move from 20 to 25 or 30 to 32. But you tend to be in the middle of those kinds of things, and you see the fruit of people's hearts warming up as they get closer to being followers of Jesus. So that would be a 5 on the scale, and of course 2, 3, and 4 are somewhere in between those two extremes. Then the final scale, scale 5, is a consuming passion for normal people. A consuming passion for normal people. Somebody on the one side of this scale would be someone who says, I really don't even think about people as eternal beings. I really don't care much about what happens to people in this life or in the next life. I kind of disregard that as life goes on and don't pay too much attention to it. I'm pretty absorbed with my own personal world, and other people just don't matter that much, especially people outside the family of God. Someone who's a 5 on the scale would be somebody who says, every day I think about what's going on with the people around me who don't yet know Jesus. I pray for people on a regular basis. If you've cried over people who are lost people in the last 6 months or the last year, you've probably got a high passion level for the lost. D.L. Moody is a great example of this. He was an evangelist in the 1870s, and he made a resolution that he said, I will never let one single day pass by without sharing the good news of Jesus with somebody. And if he was about to go to bed at night and realized he hadn't shared with somebody, he would get up out of bed and go to the streets and find somebody who's hanging out on the streets of Chicago in order to tell them the good news about Jesus. He had a consuming passion for the lost. He would have definitely been a 5, okay? So if your heart is there, if your mind is there, if you wake up and think about how to reach people for Christ, that's a 5. And then, of course, 432 is in between those two. Okay, so you should have 5 numbers written down on your sheet of paper right now. Go ahead and add up those 5 numbers, okay? Add up those 5 numbers, and then come up with a total. So I'll give you guys a minute to add up your numbers and come up with your total there. All right, you should have a result that's somewhere between the numbers of 5 and 25, somewhere between 5 and 25. Okay, so if you're somewhere between the numbers 20 and 25 on this scale, move over Billy Graham. I mean, you have definitely got the spiritual gift of evangelism. Higher numbers are better, and God is going to use you in amazing ways. You've got to develop that gift, and I'll talk about a little bit more about that in just a minute. If you're somewhere between 15 and 20, you've probably got a latent gift of evangelism. And what I mean by that is you're likely somebody who has that spiritual gift, but you either don't know it or you haven't developed it, and so it's not taking you really high on that scale. If you're between 10 and 15, it's likely that you're somebody who is a faithful follower of Jesus, but probably not a gifted evangelist. And that's okay. Most people who are followers of Jesus aren't gifted evangelists, but you'll probably score somewhere in that level of the scale if that's the case. You're a faithful follower of Jesus, but not gifted. And if you're somebody who is between 5 and 10 on the scale, okay, 5 and 10 on the scale, you're definitely gifted in another area. You know, that's the good news. You're definitely gifted in another area. And if you're somewhere between 0 and 5, just stay home. Just stay home. Okay, actually, you can't score that low, so there's really nobody here who's in that category. Okay, so what if you get to the place where you say, I am a gifted evangelist? And just if you're someone who scored 18 or higher, think of yourself in that category. I am a gifted evangelist. Some people just are. I mean, God has given you that gift, and it's something to celebrate. There's actually only one person in the Bible who is named as an evangelist, and his name is Philip, and the passage is Acts 21:8. It says this: Leaving the next day, we reached Caesarea and stayed at the house of Philip the evangelist, one of the 7. Now, there were probably other people in the Bible who had the spiritual gift of evangelism, but Philip definitely did. We read about that most clearly in Acts chapter 8, one of my favorite passages in all of the Bible. But he had the gift, and he used the gift. And if you're somebody who has that spiritual gift, embrace it and be willing to use it for the sake of the kingdom. If you do, you will have a disproportionate impact. It's the best use of your life to bring the good news of Jesus to people who don't know it. You will reach people, you will shake eternity, you will have the most fun ever. There is nothing in this world that is either higher risk or higher impact for a person who has the gift of evangelism than sharing their faith. So embrace it and get really good at it. Here's what I find about people who do have the gift of evangelism. Number one, gifted evangelists tend to be people who have a high relational IQ, not a low relational IQ. Usually people who really have the gift are people that have an unusual sensitivity to people, insight, and the ability to be with people and know what's going on in their internal world. People who really have the gift of evangelism tend to be great listeners. Not great talkers, as the stereotype says, but people who are great listeners. They ask great questions. They find out where people are coming from. So when they speak, their words are powerful because they know the context of the person that they're talking to. I find that people who have the gift get a high return on their investment. When they talk to people about spiritual things, people light up and God works in their lives in an amazing way. People who have the gift of evangelism tend to be people that are deeply spiritually connected and have a high awareness of the spiritual world that's all around us and a sensitivity to what's happening there. People with the spiritual gift of evangelism are able to speak in all different kinds of personalities, all different kinds of situations. They have all different styles: confrontational, intellectual, serving, testimonial, relational. They have all different personalities, all different ages. They speak to all different audiences. Some of them are extroverts, to be sure. Some of them are introverts, and they still have the gift. About half of them, I would say, are introverts who have the gift. But what they all have in common is that every single one of them needs to develop their gift. And I want to give you 3 applications that you can do right away in order to be able to develop this gift if you have that gift. Number 1 is you need to go to the spiritual intersections class, or the intersections class, that's meeting this Tuesday at 7 o'clock right here at the Old Mill campus. It is a class that is designed to help you learn how to share your faith the same way that Jesus did. I wrote this curriculum a number of years ago when I lived in Chicago. We've brought it here to Omaha. Tim Perry has helped me to make it even better here. And Tim and I are personally going to be teaching this course beginning this Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. And I want to encourage you to sign up and be here. If you have the gift, one of the things you need to master is being able to share your faith in the same way Jesus did. And it's important to learn that. Questions and stories and things that engage people's minds. It's the way Jesus did it. It's the way that we should do it. Second thing I want to encourage you to do, if you have that spiritual gift, is immediately after this service, I want you to walk to the chapel if you're in the Old Mill campus. If you're at the Sarpy campus, I want you to meet Steve just to this side of the stage. He'll be meeting you here. And either Tim Perry, who is our pastor of spiritual discovery, or Steve Walters will meet with you and talk with you about the practical things that you can do to help develop the gift of evangelism that God has given you. Okay? So go ahead and meet with them. It'll just be a 10-minute meeting immediately after the services. Go straight there, do the 10-minute meeting, and it'll be helpful for all. Third thing I want to encourage you to do, if you have the spiritual gift of evangelism, is to consider leading a seeker small group. Now, a seeker small group is a group that's designed for people that are not yet followers of Jesus to explore the life of Christ at a pace that they can tolerate, at a pace that makes sense for them, where they can ask all of their questions and do all their study for themselves. Sometimes it happens one-on-one with one Christian and one friend who's a normal person. Sometimes there's like 2 Christians and a group of people that are not followers of Jesus. And they get together on a regular basis, usually for about 6 weeks, and they talk about these issues. And if it goes well, then they keep on meeting together. Now, there are some pieces of curriculum that I want to let you know about related to this. And I'll tell you, this is a little bit weird for me because it's curriculum that I wrote. And a number of years ago, I wrote 8 different study guides that help people to introduce their friends to Jesus through seeker small groups. And I've got them here. In 5 years, I have never plugged these before because I'm a little bit shy about plugging my own stuff, but I'm going to plug it today because it matches what's in the message. 8 different study guides that that will help you not only to lead a group, but also to have the material to use once that group actually gets going. The questions are in here. The answers to those questions are in here. It's just a very easy study guide that'll help you to lead. And there's all different subjects. Like this one is about the evidence for Jesus. The evidence for Jesus in this one, 6 weeks on that. This one is Jesus and the end of the world. Is Jesus coming back again? And what's all the stuff around that? This one called Sudden Impact is all about encounters people had with Jesus, people who met Jesus and how he changed their life. This one is about the question of suffering and evil, and if there's ever a tragedy that happens in our culture or in another culture, you know, the Japanese nuclear tragedy and earthquake that's recently happened, people are asking about what about how can God be good when there's so much suffering and evil? This is a guide that helps to answer that question, and there's 4 more as well that you could pick up that are on a variety of different subjects, and I just want to encourage you to check those out. I do get the author discount on those, and I don't want to make any money on them. I just want to pass them on to you for the price I get them. So they're available for $5 either at the resource table or the resource booth right here at Christ Community and our Sarpy County location. All right, so that's if you're someone who has the gift. Consider leading a seeker group. Meet Tim Perry afterwards and go to spiritual intersections, and that'll help you with your next steps. If you're somebody who is not a gifted evangelist, and that's like 90% of the people who are here, you don't have that spiritual gift, there's nothing that you should feel bad about, but you have to ask the question, well, what's my role? And I think the best way to figure this out is to ask the question, what did Jesus say was the role of people around him who did not have the gift of evangelism? Because if I'm taking a guess based on the evidence I see in the Bible, my guess is that Peter and John probably had the spiritual gift of evangelism, and the rest of the disciples didn't. And that was just fine. So we have to ask, well, what was it that Jesus said to all of the disciples about their role in reaching lost people? And in order to do that, I think it's helpful to go to the very first command that Jesus gave when he was sitting in the boat with Peter and James and John, all three of them sitting there together, and he has this miraculous catch of fish. I've got a two-part quiz. First part is really easy. Jesus says to them, okay, he calls them to follow him. He says, follow me and I will make you, fill in the blank, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. Okay, easy quiz question. But what Jesus is saying is, your vocation is changing, guys. You used to catch fish for a living. Now your role in this world is to catch men. All of you guys, that's your new job. Then you have over here, at the other end of Jesus' ministry, the very last thing that he said. That was the first thing. What was the last thing that Jesus said at the end of his ministry? I want you guys, actually, as a quiz, so you can turn to the person sitting next to you and say, I think this is the last thing that Jesus told the disciples before he left planet Earth. It's a hard question. So go ahead and turn and tell the person sitting next to you. Okay, so here's the answer. I know this is a tough one. The last thing that Jesus said comes from Acts chapter 1, verse 8. And most people think it was the Great Commission, but it's actually this. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and even to the ends of the earth. Jesus said, you will be my witnesses. He didn't say, okay, Pete and John, you guys be my witnesses, and the rest of you go shine shoes or lick rocks or something, because only the gifted evangelists are my witnesses. No way. He says, you all are to be my witnesses. Every last one of you. You're not all lawyers in the criminal trial court, but all of you are at least to give testimony, to be a witness of what God has done in your life, to bring the story of Jesus from an eyewitness perspective to people who have never heard it before. You may not have all the answers, you may not be able to defend every corner of it, but still, you are my witnesses, and it's for every single person. Because the truth about you is, you have some uniquenesses that you don't share with anybody in this room or anybody in this world. You have a unique personality. You have a unique experience. You have a unique story to tell. You have a unique set of friendships and relationships that nobody else has. And Billy Graham is not going to be able to reach your friends. And I'm not going to be able to reach your friends. And that person who has the gift that's sitting 4 seats down from you, they're not going to be able to reach your friends. God has designed you to be able to reach people with the gifts and the network that he has specifically and uniquely given you. So for everybody in the congregation, the question is, what are the fundamentals that I need to do, every single person, in order to reach that small group of people that God has uniquely designed me to be able to reach out to? 3 things I want to give you as well. Number 1 is that you pray. You pray, okay? Every single person should be praying. If you look in your programs, there's a little card that's a 5x5 card. Some of you still may have something similar from our Double Your Impact campaign, but we're going to keep on doing this. And the idea is that all of us should have 5 normal friends in our life that we pray for every single day, and we just spend 5 minutes praying for these people, praying for their well-being, praying for God to be touching their lives, and praying for opportunities to be someone who brings the good news into their life. And what I find is that there is a very high correlation between people who pray for those opportunities and people who actually receive those opportunities. And I want you to write down the names of 5 real-life people on your 5x5 list and make a commitment, 5 minutes a day, 5 days a week, pray for 5 people, and see what God does. You'll be amazed how God opens doors if you pray for these opportunities on a daily basis. Number 2 is to go to intersections. Again, Go to intersections, because the fundamentals that we deal with there are not just for gifted evangelists. It's tools that relate to everybody in the church. And if you've never learned how to share your faith how Jesus did, you need to learn that. So be sure you go to that Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Give away books. Give away books is the third thing I want to encourage you to do. Some of you who were here last week and you already have seen this, you're aware of this, but for those who aren't, I'm going to re-explain it. We've got a golden opportunity with Easter coming up. It's a season where people think about Eastery kinds of things. It's the easiest opportunity we have all year long to invite people to come to church. It's the time they're most likely to say yes. And it's the most compelling story in all of the Bible, Jesus' death and resurrection. And so Lee Strobel has put together a very cool book that is a case for the resurrection. And what he does is he goes through the book of Luke and other historical and archaeological sources, and he says, how do you make a case that Jesus really, really did actually literally bodily rise from the dead? And he makes that case in this book. It's a short booklet that's very easy to read. And Lee said, I so want to get this into people's hands. He was talking to us. He says, if you want, I'll pass on my discount to you so that you can give these out as inexpensively as possible all over Omaha. And he said, I'll give these to you for $1 each. And I thought, man, that is an amazing deal. I would love it if 10,000 people in Omaha were able to get this book in their hands and be exposed to the Jesus who really did die and rise. And if you don't have the gift of evangelism, you don't have to explain all this stuff. All you have to do is get this book into somebody's hands and say, here's an Easter gift for you. I've done this, 18 or 19 books I think I've given out so far in the last couple of weeks. I give them out to waitresses and people at the fitness center. And what I found is about half of the people who I give them to are polite. And they say, thank you very much, that's nice. And, probably will never read it. But that's okay, they're still nice to me about it, and they're grateful for a gift. But about the other half of the people that I give this to are interested. And they want to have a next step kind of a conversation, and it turns into like a 5 to 30-minute conversation about spiritual things. And one of those guys was the guy at who I buy my men's clothing from. And his name is Jeff, and I gave it to him and a couple of his employees. He's the manager. He wins the Nice Guy of the Year award. You know people like this? He's just nice to hang out with. And I gave it to him, and he said, you know what, my wife and I haven't been to church for years, but we keep on talking about how we need to go back, and now we've got 2 kids, and we want them to be raised in a church, and this just may be the exact thing that we need to persuade us to go to church on Easter. And he asked about our services. I explained them to him, and so he said that he's planning to show up to services. And it was a great spiritual conversation. This kind of thing just opens up doors for God to be able to work. And plus it gets good literature into people's hands. So my dream is that every family in our church would say, well, let's grab 5 of these or 10 of these or 20 of these. If they're so inexpensive, let's give these out as invitations not only to read the case for the resurrection, but throw in a little invitation to our church services as well and invite people to come out on Easter when they're most likely to be able to come. You see, everybody is called to do the work of an evangelist, even people without the gift of evangelism. Paul did this with Timothy. Now, Timothy was one of the New Testament characters that did not have the gift of evangelism. As a matter of fact, he was known for being kind of timid. But Paul said to him when he gave him over, he said, hey, you're leading the church in Ephesus now. Here's what I want you to do. In 2 Timothy 4:5, he says this to Timothy. He says, but you, keep your head in all situations, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, and discharge all the duties of your ministry. Even people who don't have the spiritual gift of evangelism are called to be bringers of that message of good news to the people that God has put in their path. And you'll be able to uniquely reach people that God has designed you to be able to reach. The truth is, as a church, we will never reach our full redemptive potential unless we do 2 things. Number 1, if we help people who have the gift of evangelism to identify that gift, embrace that gift, and develop that gift to all of its potential so they can have a disproportionate impact on our city. We will also never reach our full redemptive potential unless we empower every single person in our congregation, whether or not they have the gift, with the basic tools that they need to just be able to share with that small circle of friends that God has put in their life that they can uniquely reach. Can you imagine what would happen if all 3,000 people who come here on Sunday mornings were able to do that with their little pocket? Can you imagine how Omaha would be transformed? Could you imagine how God might be at work? Well, that's the dream. And the best news on the planet, the news of Jesus' death and resurrection, is worth bringing to every man, woman, and child in the city that God has called us to. Amen? Amen. Let's pray. God, thank you for the love that you have for us in Jesus. Thank you for the joy that it is to follow you. And thank you for the mind of Christ who lives inside of us. We're so glad that we have a message of hope and joy to be able to bring. And we pray, God, for your strength and your power to lead us and empower us and to guide our conversations, to give us people to be able to have a chance to talk to and pray for. And we pray, God, that through this your kingdom would come and your will would be done on earth as it is in heaven. God, we pray that you would bring in the harvest and that you would send us out as your harvesters. In Jesus' name, amen.